Hello everyone, this is Soundrout, and I have been an iPhone user for 13 years. Until now. So yeah, I switched from an iPhone to an Android for the first time in my life, and in this video I want to talk about how that was for me. Now the reason why I'm making this is that I've seen a lot of people online considering switching and still being on the fence about it, so hopefully this video gives you a little bit more information and allows you to consider better whether you want to switch or not. Now the reason why I switched in the first place is because of this iPhone 11 Pro. I've used this thing for over 5 years now since it launched, and it has been great, okay? I've loved iPhones and this thing was incredible. But there have been a lot of advancements in the last 5 years that I wanted to take advantage of. For example, a 120Hz screen, which makes it feel buttery smooth and much better to use. So I wanted to upgrade, and I looked at the latest iPhones, but unfortunately they did not impress me. They didn't have that many standout features, and the base iPhone 16 is still 60Hz, which is kind of unacceptable. But I wasn't very impressed and wanted to look for a different phone. So after doing a lot of searching and scouring the web for all the different Android phones that there are out there, I landed on this S24 Ultra, the Samsung flagship phone. This was kind of the best all-rounder for me. It had everything I wanted, great software support, great hardware, and it was also on sale when I got it, which meant that it was a lot better of a deal compared to the latest iPhone, for example. If you look at the price difference here, the latest iPhone with 120Hz is $1,000 for the 128 gig version, whereas this thing is 512 gigs and has that feature and a lot more. So I consider this thing much better value. Of course, it's personal preference as to which Android you actually want, but yeah, that's the reason why I chose this phone in the first place. So now let's start to focus on the differences between iPhones and Androids. First of all, the elephant in the room is that this phone is 5 years newer than this phone. So of course it's gonna be better, right? But the thing I want to focus on in this video are either the software differences, which this phone has the same as the latest iPhones, or the hardware differences that this thing still has over the latest iPhone. First of all, there is a big difference in this one in that it has the S Pen. It's a little pen that goes into the bottom of the phone, which you can see a little hole for right there. Now this pen is really cool, but not entirely that useful. The thing you can use it for most, I guess, is writing notes. There you go. There's also a lot of hidden things you can do with it, like gestures, where you can spin around and do some cool things with the phone. You can set that up to do whatever you want, really, but I personally haven't found that very useful. I could just open the phone and do it with my fingers. But the thing I found most useful for it is definitely gaming, okay? So if I get in here and show you an example, this is Mindustry if you're curious, but basically what you can do with this pen is very precise movements that you otherwise wouldn't be able to do with your fingers. So it's a lot easier to use the pen in this game in particular because it requires a lot more precise movements when you want to make these little tracks here. But if you're using your finger, it's a little bit more tricky to get exactly where you want it to go. So that's one example of how this thing is really useful. Other than that, I'm actually not sure. I'm still experimenting, but it's a pretty cool feature for sure that iPhones do not have at this moment. Next up, we can discuss how you actually get into these phones. With iPhones, you have Face ID, which is actually really good. I love Face ID. I've always loved it. It's really simple to use. You just look at the phone and you're in. How could it be more simple? Well, on these guys, you have an under-screen fingerprint sensor, which you just put your finger on and it works just like that. So yeah, you can use multiple different fingers if you want to. You can use that one. You can use a thumb, which is more comfortable when you're actually holding the phone. But yeah, fingers are really good for if you just, it's on the table like this, for example. But yeah, the under-screen fingerprint sensor works really well and I do love it, but Face ID is better and easier to use because you don't even have to touch the screen. I would also love if they included a thumb sensor on the side, a thumb fingerprint sensor, so that when you just picked up the phone, it automatically unlocked pretty much. So yeah, no issues at all with that. We can move on now to the biggest difference between these two phones is software. Now, the software in these two phones are different, of course. That's the main thing that people usually differentiate the phones between, but in my opinion, they're actually very similar. The reason for this is that iOS and Android have stolen features from each other over the years so many times that now they're extremely similar. Not only from the home screens, but to the control center, notifications, customization, all of that stuff, they're all very similar to each other. Now, while this is the case, of course, there are quite a few big differences. In my opinion, the biggest difference is the navigation. So on Android phones, there is a universal back button. Now, what this does is when you swipe from the side of the screen, it allows you to go back. You can also customize it to be a button at the bottom, but I prefer the buttonless gestures because that's what I'm used to. That's what iPhones use. So the back button here actually replaces some of the gestures that happen on iOS. For example, if I go on Reddit here, so when you're on iOS, all you have to do is swipe from the middle of the screen, and then you go back from the post that you were at. Whereas on here, you can't do that. It just goes to a different post. So on this one, you have to swipe from the side and use the back button to get out of the post. This is quite a big learning curve once you're coming from iPhone. It took me about 1 or 2 weeks to get used to this, but basically, whenever you want to go back, you just swipe from the side of the screen rather than from the middle of the screen on a lot of apps on iOS. So I do like this feature. I think it's pretty handy, and it really doesn't have any problems in my opinion. You just have to get used to it after a while. Something really cool you can do with this swipe gesture is customize it completely. So if I go into my customization apps, you have one-hand operation here, which lets you customize a lot of things about this. For example, where you can do it. So you can customize these handles as much as you want. You can make them shorter. This is the area where you can make this back swipe happen. You can make it longer, you can change where it is, and you can even customize what happens and the direction in which it happens. So see, you can also change the angles at which you can do these swipes, and it's really cool. So what I've done with this is I've customized it so my diagonal swipes open the Quick Tools menu. This allows me to adjust brightness and volume and all these other little quick control things like do not disturb mode or flashlight or anything really. And also one thing I don't like about Android so far is that there is no brightness control in the quick control menu, which is really weird. I don't know why they don't include it here, but all I did to get around that was add it to my Quick Tools menu here, which is actually easier to get to since you can do it from anywhere on the screen rather than having to pull down from the top here. So that's the back button, biggest difference, but you'll definitely get used to it like I did. So another difference here is the wallpaper customization. So something I love with Android is that you can actually use Wallpaper Engine on here. Wallpaper Engine is a really good app. You can also get it on Steam, that's where you usually get it. And you can use it to add animated wallpapers to your desktop and also on Android. You can sync up all your wallpapers, use the same one on your desktop and Android, which is great. Something I learned is that it's not possible to get this on iPhone because on iPhones, it's really hard to get animated wallpapers on your home screen. The only way to do that, I think, is live photos, which then isn't really animated. So this is a really cool thing you can do on Androids, which is impossible on iPhones. And of course, customization is super simple. You just tap on the wallpaper that you want. There's a lot more than this you can choose from the workshop, and boom, look at that. You have a beautiful animated wallpaper on your home and lock screen, just like that. Boom. Looks awesome, doesn't it? I love it. So this is probably my favorite feature that I've discovered. Very cool, very cool. So not only can you change the wallpaper a lot better on Android than iPhone, you can also change the icons themselves or the always on display screen as well. So there's a lot of ways to do this. I'm just going to use the Galaxy Themes app because that's probably the easiest way. You can also get animated wallpapers through this, but I prefer Wallpaper Engine. So I'm just going to set it to this pack really quick, see what this looks like. And there we go. Now we have an icon pack. It looks pretty nice, I would say. You can do this, of course, with a ton of different icon packs. And I love this customization. Of course, they added this to iOS in a way where you can now make them into dark mode on here. But I feel like this is better because it makes it has a custom pack designed for each icon rather than a skin that's kind of assumed for the icon, if that makes sense. And I would say overall, customization is definitely a big selling point for Android because there's a lot more you can do. For example, you can rearrange these settings as much as you want, which is really cool. I removed a bunch of settings that I never use at all. I just completely remove them. See, you can do it right here. Just like this. There you go. You can remove them, hide them, show them, move them around. All these different settings you can completely customize, which is really cool. Another thing you can do is customize the keyboard that you use for typing completely. You can change it to certain different manufacturers' keyboards. For example, I use Gboard, which is made by Google. It has a clipboard and some really cool features that I love. You can also use modes and routines to do a lot of really cool things. Like for me, I have a battery maximum setting so that it stops charging when it's at 90% and then it starts charging again when it's at 87% so that I can save a little bit of my battery health and still have a lot of charge left for the day. And side note, battery life has been great. I've seen no problems at all. It lasts me a full day, no problem. And the only downside with customization is that you need to do a lot of research and searching YouTube tutorials, finding the right apps, finding things that don't work, and research and restarting and doing things like that. It does take a long time and it takes a lot of effort to get it customized in the way that you like. I've seen things that don't work at all. I've seen tutorials that are not very helpful. So when I got this phone, it took me maybe, I would say 2 weeks of just customizing and messing around with settings to get it exactly how I like. Don't get me wrong, it's not too difficult, it just takes a long time because sometimes the solutions you find are from 10 years ago and they don't even work. But once you do get over that hurdle and customize it to your liking, I would say that it's amazing. So overall, I would say whether you choose an iPhone or you choose an Android, you're not going to be disappointed, okay? Phones these days have gotten so good that there's really no wrong choice anymore. I mean, that's just from a non-power user experience, right? If you're looking to be a power user to get the most bang for your buck, I would definitely go Android at this point. But if you're just a regular casual user, you really can't go wrong. So whatever you choose to buy is really a good choice in my book. So that's it, I guess, for this video. Hopefully this video was helpful to you guys in some way, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye bye.